Good morning. It is so wonderful to see so many people after our...
New Jersey Council of County Colleges proudly presents Vision 2028, a framework for the future. The Vision 2028 Leadership Summit is supported by a generous grant from the Prudential Foundation.
College Leadership Summit. Thank you all for being here. So with a short welcome from Middlesex County College, I'd like to ask Interim President Mark McCormick to come to the stage.
Aaron's taller than I am. Whoop. Are we good? Good morning and welcome. I wish I could have fixed the weather for you, but I don't have that power yet. Before I offer some brief remarks to introduce the day, I want to acknowledge the service of our student ambassadors. They're in the back there. Please give them a round of applause. They were intrepid out there in the rain this morning, helping to get from the parking lot to the building. So thank you to our students. Each of our 19 county colleges in New Jersey, like any college or university, wants to be special and unique and recognized for that. Some things we claim about our institutions are simply facts. For example, Bergen Community College definitely has the largest enrollment, and Salem Community College, where I used to work, has the smallest. Brookdale Community College sits on the grounds of the beautiful old Brookdale Horse Farm. Camden County College claims to offer the lowest tuition in the state. Mercer County Community College offers the only funeral service program in New Jersey, and Salem again offers the only associate degree program in scientific glass in the nation. And Rowan College of Burlington County claims to be the first community college in our state to be authorized to offer junior year courses as part of a 3+1 with their partner, Rowan University. Those are all relatively easy facts to verify and validate. Then there are facts about geography. While all 19 of us claim to be located in the state of New Jersey, such claims seem a bit questionable to me at times. For example, Salem, where I used to work, I think it's really in Delaware. Atlantic and Cape May County, I think you're on the Delmarva Peninsula. North of Passaic are part of New York State. And Sussex, I just told John Connolly, that's in Canada. And we all know that Hudson County is really the sixth borough of New York City. So in the spirit of good fun, I want to review with you briefly a few of the claims we make on our website that maybe fall between fact and wishful thinking. At least 4 of our 19 county colleges claim to be the first community college in the state. Let's take a look at the evidence. Ocean County College has a document from the state from early '64 that authorizes them to be a county college under the new County College Act of 1962. Union College claims an apostolic-like succession in an unbroken line to predecessor institutions of higher learning dating back to 1933, and they rest their claim apparently on some ancient tablets found in the state by a Union County gentleman in the 1800s that contains a prophecy that one day there'd be a community college in Cranford. A related claim from Cumberland says they're the first community college to open its own campus. And several of us claim to send the largest number of transfer students to our partners. Essex, for example, claims to be the largest center to Montclair, NJIT, and Rutgers. And by Rutgers, I think you mean Rutgers Newark, because we in Middlesex claim to send the most to Rutgers New Brunswick. Speaking of evidence, some of us point to rankings from external organizations to validate our claims as being the best. So for example, a lot of us say we're the best for veterans: Warren, Mercer, Middlesex. Rowan College at Gloucester County claims to be one of the fastest growing community colleges according to Community College Week. And Raritan Valley, I'm sorry, Michael, says that you're the best from 4 different websites: bestcolleges.com, wallethub.com, niche.com, and Zipla. I thought Zipla made lighters. And sometimes no evidence is offered at all. Warren, for example, claims on its website to be unique, period. So I believe I've recognized all 19 of us fairly and unfairly, and I doubt we will resolve the contest among us about who's the best, the first, or the only. However, what draws us together, especially today, is not our differences, but what we share in common. While each college has a distinct character and history, and we all share a common mission, we want to provide affordable, quality education to our citizens to help them be ready for transfer and the world of work. We all face similar challenges, and our students have similar needs. Here's a few stats about students at Middlesex that probably are familiar to you from your own college. 52% of our students are the first in their family to attend college. Many are immigrants, the children of immigrants. For many, English is not their first language and not the language they speak at home. The vast majority work. In fact, 53% of our students work more than 20 hours a week, and a third more than 30 hours a week. Most students are trying to balance school with work and family obligations. So I applaud Aaron Fichtner and the Council of County Colleges for bringing us together today with a vision of creating a shared vision for all of us. I truly believe that our advocacy efforts will be stronger and more effective as a group working together than we are individually. And I think with the shared vision 2028, we'll be stronger overall. In closing, I wish to thank Aaron and his staff for selecting Middlesex to host this event. And Aaron, I know you selected us because we're the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for that very appropriate introduction. Thank you. I hope that all of your colleagues will still talk to you this afternoon. We'll find out. No, I think all in good fun. So as many of you know, the Council of County Colleges is enshrined in state law, and we work to support and coordinate the work of the 19 community colleges that Mark talked about quite colorfully. We believe that we are stronger when we work together, and when we build strong and meaningful partnerships with businesses, with high schools, with state and local government, colleges and universities, workforce agencies, and community and faith-based organizations. We all know that the world is changing, and while change may be the only constant in our modern world, the pace of change seems to be increasing with every new day, with every new news cycle, with every technological advance. Community colleges are indispensable institutions in a world of economic and technological change, helping people of nearly all ages from all communities in our state to gain the skills and knowledge that they need to succeed and thrive as members of their communities, as participants in our democracy, as workers, as entrepreneurs, and as leaders. Every year, more than 325,000 individuals attend a New Jersey community college. Their stories, their aspirations are as diverse and varied as our state. Some students are recent high school graduates on a pathway to an associate's degree with plans to transfer to a four-year college or university. Some are recent high school graduates who want to gain skills, credentials, and degrees that will allow them to get a job and start a career. Many have been in the workforce and are attending college to upgrade their skills, find a new career, pursue a dream or goal that was deferred. Many, as Mark noted, are working one or two, sometimes three jobs while they attend college. It's critically important that we work together to ensure that community colleges in New Jersey are positioned to thrive and innovate in the years ahead. Economists and experts agree that most individuals will need a post-secondary degree or credential if they are to have a family-supporting job and career. Yet in our very highly educated state, half of all adults have no education after high school, and the rates of post-secondary degree and credential attainment vary dramatically by race, ethnicity, and geography. We must find new strategies and approaches to help more individuals obtain a post-secondary degree or credential, including finding new ways to help adults increase their skills and education, and finding new strategies that will close the attainment and achievement gaps. We must also ensure that our state's skilled workforce remains one of the most innovative, productive, and competitive in the country and the world. The state's key industries, as we all know, are driven by and rely on a skilled and talented workforce. We must continue to expand partnerships with businesses and ensure that individuals are learning the skills, knowledge, and abilities to navigate and thrive in a changing economy. We are building on an incredibly strong foundation. Our 19 community colleges are engines of their communities. All have built strong partnerships with high schools, colleges, and universities. Employers all have talented staff and faculty, dedicated and passionate about the students that they serve, and we are well positioned for the future. So we launched the Vision 2028 effort to develop a framework for the future of community colleges that builds on that solid foundation. In the past 2 months, we have had discussions and convenings with more than 300 community college leaders and have received more than 100 suggestions through our online idea box. I'd encourage you to keep submitting ideas when you go back to your offices. And today, these conversations continue. So I want to thank you all for attending the summit and contributing to this very important effort. Here in this auditorium are gathered innovative, creative thinkers and leaders. Each of the 19 community colleges have sent delegations of about 8 to 10 individuals, depending on the storm and weather conditions, from across their institutions. And we are expecting more than 100 stakeholders and leaders to be here today, representing the business community, government, education, higher education, libraries, workforce development, community-based organization, and others. And so I want to thank all of you for being here today with us and being a part of this important effort. The Vision 2028 effort is possible because of all of you. It's also possible because of the generous support of the Prudential Foundation, and Prudential has been a great supporter of the Council Center for Student Success for many years, and we're very glad that Sam Diaz from the foundation is here with us. So I want to thank Sam on behalf of the foundation for their support of this effort. During today's summit, we will have a mix of presentations that will spark new thoughts and new ideas, and we will have some discussions to gather input from all of you, and we ask that you be active participants during the day. So in the spirit of that request, I'm going to ask you to think about a question. And I'm going to ask you to pull out your cell phones from your pocket and engage in a short collaborative effort, if you could do that. All right. So I want you to think of one word that you would use, one single word that you would use to describe New Jersey's community colleges. And I'm going to ask you to go to the website menti.com, menti.com. And when you get to menti.com, I want you to enter the code 813483. So once again, it's menti.com. We're going to test the internet access here at Middlesex County College. And the code is 813483. Everybody get that? All right. So when you see the screen pop up, enter the one word that comes to mind when you think of New Jersey's community colleges. All right. And these will appear as you enter them. So if you imagine what it would have taken for us to do this 5, 6, 7 years ago, if we wanted to do this exercise, we would have had to have paper ballots that we distribute to all of you. You'd have to write something on the paper. We'd have to collect them. We'd have to have people collating them. We'd have to hire a graphic designer to design this graphic. And we'd have to come back to you probably an hour later with the results. So think about how much the world has changed to allow us to do these things that we now can do. Affordable, obviously, by far the largest word. Opportunity, innovative also. Thank you all for playing along with this little exercise. I hope as you see these words, you'll think, inspire you to think about the future of community colleges. So we have a very busy program today. In the morning, we're going to hear from two of New Jersey's leading thinkers about economic and technological change, and then we'll have a panel discussion on the challenges and opportunities made possible by that change. So I'd like to now invite our first speaker to come to the podium, Dr. Bill Rogers. Dr. Rogers is a professor of public policy at the Blaustein School for Planning and Public Policy at Rutgers University. He's also the chief economist at the Heldrick Center for Workforce Development. He's an elected member of the National Academy of Social Insurance and serves as the Academy's board chair, and he's a non-resident fellow at the Century Foundation. Prior to joining Rutgers, Rogers served as a chief economist at the U.S. Department of Labor, served on the National Urban League's Council of Economic Advisors and President Obama's Department of Labor transition team. Bill regularly appears on TV in a variety of mediums and is called upon by journalists to talk about his areas of expertise, which include compensation, pay equity, diversity and inclusion, the labor market, and general economic trends. I was honored to I was honored to work with Bill when I was at the Heldrick Center, and now I get to see him on Meet the Press and hear him on NPR. So without further ado, Bill Rogers. All right, thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Aaron. Let me just do a test run here first. Oh, flew by. Okay, great. Thank you. Good morning. So, yes, I'm an economist, and I'm proud of it. I got preempted again. I usually, from Aaron was talking about some of my press things I do. One of the first times I was asked to go on NPR, and I was driving to the studio. Got the call from the studio saying, Professor Rogers, you know we invaded Kosovo today. So you can turn around and go home. We're going to devote the whole show to that. So the weather must have known I was going to come with some depressing news, and so the weather preempted me a little bit here, because I know I was very kind of depressed around. Is this a sort of a foreshadowing what the winter's going to be like? And I hope not. But actually, I'm going to start off with what I think is some depressing sort of news, and some of it you know, for many of you, you're on the front lines, so you experience it, you see it on your daily lives. But I am going to try to end, I will end on a positive note, that we do have choices, we do have the ability to make change. We just need courage in many places, and resources. So what I want to do first is talk with you about just, now it doesn't want to work. Okay. What I want to do is talk with you about three challenges that we, all of us collectively face. Challenge number one is unhealthy structural inequality. What do I mean by that? Well, we have several ways I can describe this. Number one is the dramatic income inequality that has emerged since the 1980s. So this is just showing you, I'm just going to buzz through these really quickly, this is just showing you by portions of the income distribution where we've seen just a massive sort of widening in income at the household level. Wow, okay, I'm confused. Excuse me, let's go. All right. Another major issue that I talk with my students these days is there's been, since the early 2000s, a dramatic drop or fall in what economists call worker share. And worker share is basically the portion of income or the output that the company is building that goes to workers. So we've seen growing income inequality, we've seen falling worker share. Another big problem has been the separation between productivity growth and what people are taking home. Okay? The idea, right, is that we should be getting paid our productivity. Okay? And regardless of race, gender, sex, age, we've seen a dramatic breaking of that relationship since the early 1980s. Okay? That productivity growth has continued to grow while wages have stagnated. Okay? So that's the sort of this notion of unhealthy structural, my goodness, unhealthy structural inequality. Okay? Those are your pictures. We also, from a standpoint, and Aaron kind of talked about it a little bit, we have persistent income inequality, persistent earnings inequality. And this is just showing you, and it's by education. So regardless of education, women on average, their annual earnings are about 2/3 of men's here in the state, in New Jersey. Another way to think about the persistent inequality is if we look across different groups, and here I'm showing you the share of individuals that are employed at a given time. And this is from the American Community Survey. And what should jump out at you are the groups that have the lowest participation. Our teens, people with disabilities, parents with children. As the number of children rise, that percentage, 60%, is actually going to be lower. We also see much lower participation rates for people with disabilities, and then by education, right? And look at that, just the jump, a 10 percentage point jump if you instead of not finishing high school, that you go further, get some college, or you graduate from high school, and then also it'll give you the jump once you attend a community college. Right? Your participation rises dramatically. And there's been some studies that you all have commissioned that look at sort of the economic impact of your schools, and several have shown, that you're talking about an $11,000 to $12,000 jump in people's earnings just if you complete an associate's degree. But what the challenge is, if you notice at the bottom of that legend, when is that data taken for? 2012, 2016. I was trying not to mention his name, but we have, our president likes to say, we're having the best economy ever. Right? And I kind of take offense to that, because when I was in the Labor Department in 2000, I had the lowest unemployment rate on record when I was the chief economist. Yes. Causality. Thank you. You can give me a hand now. Thank you. So there is, the jury's, is out. And I think and what I'm going to shift to now is shifting from structural problems, right, to cyclical. And that is that these reads here, these participation rates, are taken, as I said, towards the end, or towards the peak of this boom, the peak of this expansion. And we'll talk about why that's important, what's significant in that. So let's shift to what economists like to call cyclical. So what I've shared with you earlier, just those first slides, is the structure, the foundation of our economy, the scaffolding, right? And that scaffolding seems to suggest there are these persistent differences across groups, these persistent differences across the income scale, right? And what I'm going to show you now, unfortunately, is that even though we have an unemployment rate that's now south of 4%, we have still many of the gains during this expansion are sort of subpar. For example, here in New Jersey, since the end of the recession, beginning in 2010, hours worked have basically stagnated. Average weekly hours, as I said, have stagnated. Even average hourly earnings, right, have basically been very flat. Okay. Right? We have an unemployment rate that's below, it's about 4%. Okay? Almost dropped in half. My students say to me, Professor Rogers, didn't you just tell me that, right, we have a tight economy that helps to raise wages, that helps to increase in hours worked? Well, something's broken, right? Or another way of phrasing it, the ability of economic expansions, right, to do that good work, right, seems to have eroded. It's been eroding over the last several recoveries. How many of you have heard of ALICE? Okay, good. So my colleagues at the United Way of Northern New Jersey and myself, when I was on several of their boards, we created this concept of ALICE, basically around living wages, where we've estimated for New Jersey, right, the share of households that are asset limited, income constrained, and employed, the share of households who don't have enough, right, of resources to be able to cover their budget items, so their housing costs, their child care costs, their health insurance costs, right? And what we've shown over the years is actually, unfortunately, an increase in ALICE. Right? And what's also even more striking, right, is that the increase in ALICE households as a share of households has occurred when? The period of, right, the best prosperity. And so your economic theory would suggest, right, the number of ALICE households should do what? It should go down. It should go down. And it has not. It's continued to grow. It's continued to grow. And we're not the only state where this has been happening. One of my sons goes to school in Maryland, and I was asked to talk about the ALICE report there, and we see the same issue, that ALICE households have been rising. Why have ALICE households been rising in the specter of falling unemployment? Well, stagnating wages. Hours worked not rising as much we would like to see. And then also, if you look at the components of ALICE's expenditures, what do you think is the biggest one that's been growing? Healthcare, exactly. You read the report. Exactly, healthcare. So this notion, right, that we can just expand the economy, have a great economy, yes, it's one of the first requirements, but it doesn't promise that the pie is going to be shared. It doesn't promise right, that the pie is going to be allocated in ways that reward people's productivity. Right? And that's where you come in. That's where other government public policy comes in. Okay? So let's talk about that now. But before we do that, I want to give you a little, even some more. Let's just view this as, this is ammunition for you. I'm not trying to depress you. This is ammunition for you to argue and justify what your work is doing. One of the most chilling pieces of findings from some of the Alice work and the recent Federal Reserve report is that 40% of American adults, okay, 40%, don't have enough savings to cover a $400 emergency bill. 40%, almost half of the population, half of households. 43% of households can't afford the basics to live. More than 25% of adults skipped necessary medical care last year because they couldn't afford it. Again, this survey, these results were done within the last year or two in the times of a great economy. So something's broken. Just some other factoids for you. 1 in 5 adults aren't able to pay all their bills every month. Only 38% of non-retired Americans think their retirement savings is on track. Okay. And you see the by ethnicity in terms of people feeling that they're doing financially okay. Challenge number 3. Okay. Let's look into the future. Future is a concern. Why is it a concern? Well, today, 51% of jobs pay less than $20 per hour, 70% paying less than $15 per hour. Okay. Going forward, projections on employment up through 2026, 81% of the fastest growing New Jersey jobs will pay less than $20 per hour. What educations will those require? The bulk of these jobs will not require a great deal of education. So think about scaffolding. Think about the foundation. Right? Right. Think about the inequality picture I showed you. Think about the persistent differences across the various groups. Right? Potentially more of the same. But if we address, first identify what our major policy challenges are, we can address these issues. We can turn the ship. At the national level and state level, we want to, I think, working on trying to maximize our gross domestic product, that's growth. There's a desire to be over 3.5%. Okay. What can we do to meet that goal? 1 is increasing worker share. 2, reconnect the productivity and earnings growth. Okay. The chart picture I showed you. Increasing labor force participation. Particularly reducing long-term unemployment. That is people who are working or who are unemployed for 26 weeks or more. And then the new one, new issue, new concern, is addressing people who are working part-time. There's a whole host of people working part-time, but you know what? They want to work full-time. There's another set of the population that they're not working, and if they were offered a job, they'd take it. And if you include those two people, those two groups into your unemployment rate calculation, instead of a 3.8, 3.9% unemployment rate, you get about 7.2%. Now, my friends at the Bureau of Labor Statistics don't like it when I call it that's the real unemployment rate. But in some respects, given the way the economy has changed, has evolved, right? And I'm not saying throw away the official unemployment rate, but we have to each month not only look at the official unemployment rate, but also this real unemployment rate. In technical terms, they call it the U6 unemployment rate. So they actually do publish it. You don't have to construct it yourself. But it does give you a slightly different read on how things are. We also are seeing how the issues that are being raised, a whole host of issues that are being raised around the share economy, around the gig economy. Okay? Yes, people like to say, well, I have flexibility. I can drive or I can work when I want to work. True. But if you ask them about, are they enjoying the variability in their income? If you ask them about having to now cobble together or figure out where they're going to get their health insurance, they start to get a little concerned. Right? There's a whole host of issues. I mean, one of the things that we're working on at the National Academy of Social Insurance, where as Aaron said, I'm the board chair, we're concerned about the next recession. How do these people qualify for unemployment insurance? Right? That's something we have to think about. And then the final one, a colleague at Princeton, a friend, Alan Kruger, has done some interesting work on, right, the opioid crisis. Right? That a chunk of the drop in labor force participation, or the absence of it returning to pre-recession levels, he thinks can be attributed to the growth of the opioid crisis. And then finally, one of our greatest challenges is addressing the scaffolding issue of the income inequality. Okay. So now let's move positive. Let's move forward. What can we do? What can we do? So number one, it's about giving voice to people. Okay. Everyone in this room, it's part of our jobs, right? We have to give voice to Alice. We have to give voice to our students who have disabilities. We have to give voice to those parents who are working and they have kids and they need assistance with their child care. Right? So there's been a resurgence, right? I think of organizations, of institutions that are trying to, right, raise hope, that are trying to be voices for communities, for individuals. Something that we can't control, but we need to be aware of it, and that is become macroeconomists. Right? When the Federal Reserve is meeting, right, just take that time when they issue their statement, right, and see what is their forecast. But better yet, many of you probably didn't know, but the Federal Reserves, and they're trying to do a better job of it now, from what some of my friends say, the Federal Reserves, they actually have, and maybe some of you know this, but they have consumer committees or regional committees where it's made up of college presidents, where it's made up of business leaders, okay, where that's part of their outreach to try to make sure that they're being relevant in our lives. Okay? So if you're not involved with one of those, I'd urge you to try to get involved, either with the New York Fed, Philadelphia Fed. So we got the beauty of here's in New Jersey, right? Being situated, right? You have two choices. Get involved. Again, it's about being an advocate for our constituencies, because they are engaged in this conversation around. They're starting to see signs of inflation, and so they are having the conversation: do we raise interest rates, right? Which will then have the effect of possibly slowing the economy down. So the final bullet there I want to talk about, and then I'll move forward, is investing in nonprofits. One of the things that we learned during the Great Recession was we saw a massive increase at United Way's in our clients, group match big growth. But what was also very chilling was two things. One, they were individuals and families and communities that hadn't been utilizing United Way resources prior to the Great Recession. Okay? So it was a new face. Then number two was, as the economy got better, their need continued. Their need continued. So right, it's a national conversation, but it's been going on for a number of years, and that is, and it's an interesting political sort of set of bedfellows, but long and the short of it is there's some pressure to reduce or to cut the charitable tax deduction. Okay? And I know for United Way, and probably for many of the organizations that you partner with, nonprofits, a cut in the charitable tax deduction will be have a non-trivial effect on donations and your resources. Because this is not going to affect the Bill Gateses, the Oprah Winfreys. It's going to affect people like ourselves, right? Who, are trying to do the right thing. But when push comes to shove, if there's those changes made, it'll have a dent in our donations, and hence the resources. Because the problem is because of that the house is on fire with our scaffolding, but also because of the inability or the lessening ability of the macroeconomic growth to reduce poverty, to narrow income inequality, to narrow racial and gender inequality, right, we still have intense amounts of need. Here we go again. Got it. Okay. How do we continue? This is a question of expanding and widening prosperity. Here's where you all come in. The United Nations has this really awesome concept I embraced a couple years ago called human priorities. Anybody ever heard of it? Heard of human priorities? Besides your own? Okay. Human priorities can be broken up into two components. Human capital, investments. Okay? So that's what we're doing. We're all about, right? Investing in education, investing in training, removing barriers so people can, right, acquire education and training, build their human capital. But the other component of human priorities is social capital. Okay? Social capital. That if we invest in community centers, that if we invest and make sure our social safety nets, unemployment insurance, workers' comp, that if we invest in and make the right decisions around what's the best model for Social Security, okay, that those investments in social capital, along with our human capital investments, which bleed into creating investments in human priorities, you know what's going to happen in economic growth? We're going to get growth, but also how is that growth going to be distributed more widely? Right? And what has happened is, I've done some work that have shown when you look at so human priorities as a share of national income since World War II, we've had 2 periods where we've had a slowdown of our investment in human priorities. Guess when they were? You can blurt. I encourage blurting. Guess when they occur? When did those slowdowns occur? You can share with your shoulder buddy. My K through 12 friends tell me that's what they call it when you do that, your shoulder buddy. And then you can, if they validate you, then you can share it. All right. Well, it's still early in the morning, but you'll be getting more active later in the afternoon. All right. 1980s is one. You're probably like, yeah, I knew. Why didn't you say something? And when? 2000. Yep. And a little earlier, the 2000s. Exactly. 1980s and the early 2000s. Okay. You know what also happened in that period of time? Go back to my inequality chart. Those are 2 periods where we saw an acceleration in income inequality. Yep. Yep. And unfortunately, we have sown the seeds for a third slowdown or third growth in income inequality right now for the last few years. Because we are below trend, the sort of my predicted trend of where we would want to be with our investments in human priorities. We have sown the seeds. But again, I'm hopeful, particularly with some of the increased involvement, shall we say, that we can make some changes, or changes are being made. So human priorities investments, very important. Human priority investments, what you're doing with educating our young people, this is, at one level, it's the best hedge against uncertainty. It's the best hedge against job loss. It's the best hedge against recovering from a natural disaster. 2 areas that we need to focus on, some long-standing human priority issues. Right? We need to make sure that we are improving wages, minimum wages, living wages. Social insurance is also going to be a big conversation. Child care, disability, and some new emerging human priority issues that we have to be concerned about. Number one is, on a lot of people's mind, is robotics. I'm doing some work with one of my colleagues, Richard Freeman. I'll talk about that in the conversation, about what we're finding in terms of the effects of robots. Share economy, we talked about earlier. The opioid crisis. Economic literacy, hugely important. Economic literacy, hugely important. And then I never thought in my lifetime I would see cities like Flint having issues, right? Where we've just, that's the human priority investment. We've slowed down. We've slowed down, or we're not investing in our infrastructure or communities. And then in terms of the conversation around gender and race, particularly around gender. I mean, my colleague David Sokolow, we both worked in the Department of Labor, and in some transition, and David was here, commissioner of the department. Right? And he would probably say the same thing too. That so much of conversations around issues around gender, around and race, and now we have the gun violence in our communities. Right? So that last point, we really have to hunker down and figure out what we're going to do to make our communities, our workplaces, safe places. Okay. Now we're going to shine the light on you all. Roles of the community college. Roles of the community college. Okay. Sort of my 4 broad hits are, 1, you guys are engines of local and state economic growth. I came across 2 studies that I believe were commissioned, one in Raritan Valley Community College, and then Union County College. Both were getting roughly this estimate around having an economic impact of about $400 million annually. Or the one that taxpayers should like, right, is that for every dollar that's invested by the taxpayer, you're getting back more than what you're putting in. You're getting back $5 to $8 an hour, $8. So you're engines of economic growth. We need that. We're going to need that. Number 2, you're helping community members increase their productivity and thus wages. My mission statement from the school board I was on, I've carried that with me. You all are about creating lifelong learners, independent thinkers, and responsible citizens. That's what it's about. Right? This would make you feel a little uncomfortable, college presidents, but it's true though. And I have sort of the experience to back it up. When I was at the College of William and Mary, we had a living wage campaign that was going on. I came back from the Labor Department in Washington, and there was a logjam. The president of the college wanted to do the right thing, raise wages of his landscapers and housekeepers, who were earning $7.50 for decades. But he had a board of governors that were very conservative. They were nominated or appointed by Jim Gilmore, George Allen. And so these are people who thought that, literally, they thought having faculty pay more for parking on campus than landscapers, they thought that was socialism. So we came up with a story. I said, I can solve your problem. I can turn this into a management problem for you. Right? Here's a technical term for you. Right? If you pay people crap wages, what are you going to get? Low morale, high turnover. Okay? So we made adjustments, and he made the adjustments. Unfortunately, after I left, and this is not causality, but after I left, the committee did disband, from what I heard like 3 years later. But more to the point, though, is as higher education institutions, right, it's in our mission. We're educating people, so I think in turn we need to be educating and providing opportunity for our employees, right? All of our employees, regardless of what their occupation is. So the challenge I throw out to you is let's make sure we're paying Alice-level wages, provide benefits, and then offering training and opportunities for advancement. Okay? And then the final one, which I know many of you do, so it's just more of an urging and just reminding you how important that you're serving as an advocate for Alice, that you're serving as a champion for your communities is just so, so important, especially today. So I urge greater public and private and really what the message is, urging and imploring and using the evidence about your economic impacts on your community to argue for why we need more investments in human priorities. So the last slide I want to just share with you are just over my career a variety of phrases that I've kind of grabbed and I hold on to that provide sort of guidance for me, that remind me when I get frustrated. Because I know we all, raise your hand if you get frustrated in our line of work. Yeah. Okay. You probably wanted to raise both your hands. But I do too. And so I've had some great opportunities starting and just great people I've learned from, starting with my parents. Retired social worker and a retired computer scientist. So that's how you get an economist, if you ever always wondered that. Okay. And so key phrases for us to remember. Number one, economic growth. Simple little equation, economic growth is equal to productivity growth and population growth. Right? And we all are contributing to that productivity growth part. Okay? Number two, take a riff off of Tip O'Neill's statement about all politics is local. You know what? All economics is local. All economics is local. So go back to those economic impact studies that you've gotten. We're about empowering Alice. We're about advancing the common good. We're about creating lifelong learners, say it with me, independent thinkers, and responsible citizens. Let's say it again, come on. Louder, come on, come on. Do we have to do it one more time? Okay, one more time. I saw a woman shaking her head. Come on. We are on the front lines. We need to, we need to be more engaged, more energized. I know it's a challenge. Let's do it. One more time. Creating lifelong learners, independent thinkers, and responsible citizens. Give yourselves a hand. Here we go. Yes. Okay. And my last one for you. We're all old enough, we remember the Fram oil filter commercials from 1980, right? The tagline, you can pay me now or you can pay me later. That's what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill, very much for what was part sobering but also inspiring presentation. So I'd like to ask our panel to join us on stage. Bill's going to sit down and join the panel. We have on our panel this morning Tony Monroe, president of Essex County College. We have President Mike McDonough of Raritan Valley Community College. We have President Fred Keating of Rowan College at Gloucester County. And we have Tamar Jacoby, who is the president and CEO of Opportunity America. So we're going to have a short conversation about some of the points that Bill made and talk about the challenges and opportunities and solutions that we might pursue in community colleges to the economic challenges that Bill raised. Oh, very nice. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate that. So thank you all for joining us on stage. I want to just give everyone a chance to say some words reflecting on Dr. Rogers' presentation and what we know about a rapidly changing economic world. What are some ideas, what are some things that we need to pursue in New Jersey's community colleges to make sure that we are doing our part to build a stronger economy, to help Alice, to help all of our citizens navigate. So who would like to start? President McDonough.
Sure. RV is number one, by the way, Mark. Just thank you. I want to begin by suggesting that there's one large sort of framework to think about that might promote some strategies. The framework is that we should embrace and accelerate meaningful curricular reform. I think the time is now appropriate to think about our students, our learners, and integrate a curriculum that blends, on the one hand, new technical literacies, and I'm thinking of coding, I'm thinking of data analytics, that provides students opportunities for complex critical thinking strategies, that teaches social skills that are essential to this economy, like teamwork, like creativity, like cultural agility, the ability to work with people from various backgrounds. And I think, too, at a curriculum that promotes essential habits of mind, perseverance, concentration, focus, and innovation. But radical curricular change, not simply rearranging the deck chairs. And if we start there, then I think there's some really quick things we can do to think about. And the first is that we should insist on providing our students with experiential learning opportunities. That we get our students into the world as quickly and as often as possible. but that those experiences must be meaningful. They must be linked to classroom competencies, and we must assess those experiences. The second thing is that we really must make our students have a global education. We must pursue and thrust our students into the world. They must experience the interconnectedness of this world. We must wean ourselves from the sort of addiction to the baccalaureate as the be-all and end-all of undergraduate education. We must explore more credentials. Credentials that are just in time, that are industry recognized, that are stackable, that are competency-based, and most importantly, that are student aid eligible. Community colleges can do an awful lot of innovation, but if they're not student aid eligible, it is for naught. We must find a place in our curriculum also for authentic undergraduate research opportunities. We must allow our students to confront and solve complex real-world problems. We must look at our partnerships on a variety of scales with K through 12, better curricular pathways, better career counseling, better student support services in that world. We must rethink our four-year institution partnerships. We must look at our industry and economic partnerships and our nonprofit and government partnerships. We must infuse career exploration at all stages of undergraduate exploration. I had no clue in college what I wanted to do, and then I took an education degree. I thought I'd be a high school teacher, and then right at the end of that experience, they took me into a high school. That's why I am now college president. We have got to get students in there. We have got to offer mentorship partnerships for our students, and corporations are reaching out to community colleges for those, and they're essential. We must look at assessing student learning outcomes beyond graduation. We have to look at our students in their career pathways and make that assessment about the competencies we've provided them. Are they working in those real-world situations? We need to upgrade our own technologies on campus to insist and ensure that our students themselves have access to those. And finally, we should also think of our own institutions as innovators and incubators for this new economy, for tech transfer, for applied research. And finally, let us embrace access to higher education for low income, for first generation, and all underserved populations. Thanks.
Thank you, President McDonough. President Keating.
Well, I think my colleague covered quite a bit of territory there. I would agree with all, but I come at it from a different angle. I'm looking, when you look at the economic issues that were presented to us, and then the reflection on what we as community college leaders and community college staff and faculty do. I'm of mind, and the people that I work with are somewhat moving around, and of mind that the issue really is the structure of our relationship. And by that I mean that community colleges could be and should be a more pivotal point, and that the design of higher education should go down and capture the exiting high school relationship aggressively. So that the idea of, and I don't want to get into a K-20, I know it's on your agenda later, but this idea that we are silo-driven and we are somewhat isolated in relationship in the higher ed scheme of things. These things that I heard my colleague mention, we agree with and wholeheartedly think that would come inside, but first we have to go to the scaffolding, that the structure is broken. We all insinuate it, but I think at this point we're going to have to start believing it. So by that I would say that community colleges have to overlap aggressively the high school exit, and that should become a part of the design. And it should also go to the four-year senior partner and overlap it and in some ways mirror it, and that should become a part of the design. And if you look at that then as an accepted structure that can withstand the economic pressure, I think it provides an opportunity for time to degree, which when we were doing the affordability work kept coming back to us, that the structure has to show a pathway that students today needed to be guided, and it has to be designed so that they can see it, understand it, and recognize how much it's going to cost. Because the front load of money is as critical as the back end of what they're going to have to attain. A baccalaureate is basically becoming a baseline. Master's and doctoral considerations are going to enter into almost all professions. It's already doing it. So you got to be in for, as we say, the marathon, not the sprint. So again, we hang our thinking of the economic pressure on this design that it allows students to enter into college, because in the end it's going to be how long it takes to get to the credential that would allow some employability. Associate in many cases, baccalaureate and other, finally the advanced degree, but the idea that the structure would show them how you get there the fastest way. That because a day away from employment is a day away from paying back the debt or being able to sustain and have the ability to then do the other aspects of life, home, transportation, healthcare, and those aspects. So this idea that you can take 6 years to get to it, deferring the payment and the debt, just does not work. It takes a strained situation and it makes it worse. So this idea, again, that you can get a community college to literally be the pivotal point in the middle, attaching to high school population, where I believe every high school student should leave, if capable and desirous, with a semester, if not a year of college, before you leave high school. Many aspire to get an associate's degree prior to graduation, and we give them out in record numbers every year. But again, that's by design of an individual who's capable to think that way, act that way, and is supported in their home to come to that decision. I believe it should be structural, that everyone should. So we preached in our Affordability Commission that New Jersey would allow the community college with the high schools to guarantee an individual, again, capable and ready to have at least a semester of college. Now, if you do that and they are somewhat more aggressive on their own, they could accomplish a year or associates. So we would lay out a pathway from the degree to the semester, with the understanding baseline guarantee allows that transitional bridge that they can become a part of it, understand it, better performing in that arena, and also the ability to take off some of that cost right out of the gate. Because in the three-way split, or the four-way split of that consideration economically, allows a student to get through with little to no debt whatsoever. And we provide the economic access of the most affordable in the state, in the country. So with that design, then once in, I think community college should spread their overlapping to the four-year schools that we should move into, as we proposed in New Jersey, the third year, which was really a compromise position. We believe in the community college that I work with, that we should be offering the baccalaureate. It's a less expensive consideration that could be labor-focused, labor-driven, to the idea of apprenticeship. Oh. I have one fan. One fan club. This idea that we would have the baccalaureate as part of it. Now, we could stay in our lane of the applied sciences, which drives a different type of study, which is certificate-driven. That should be then translated to credit, and that credit should be aspirational to more. But if it's not, you can go and exit, and you on-ramp, off-ramp your education as time and when you can and should. You can work while you go back to school. Hopefully, we speak to the Chamber of Commerce, back to this idea of community involvement, that we said to labor and to business, you have some obligation that's increasing to be part of the educational arena. It's not a wait and receive and criticize the product is not that good. You have an equal part in this play. So this idea of putting money into internships that are paid internships, that then go back to even to the university or the college to be a tuition account driven. I know the IRS has a problem with my thinking, but whatever. Somehow that money gets into the concept of education. I never let that get in the way. So that money goes to the tuition, which makes it then an affordable consideration. You're basically getting up to a point where you now have an individual who's in little to no debt. So the baccalaureate, maybe it's the applied science, maybe it's the BSN. We're wrestling with that as a state as we speak. But to allow the county college to get up into the upper level. If it has to compromise at a third year, so be it. But it should be up to the fourth. Now you have community colleges that are anchored in labor and workforce driving degrees, credentials that are going to be employable. Unfortunately, we're going to have to drive to that, teach to the test, and seek a way to make it without a mountain of debt. And I think if we structurally change it, then these other components can come in and be a part of the conversation, and I believe give us a better product to deliver against what we just heard.
Great. Thank you, President Keating. President Monroe.
Dr. Rogers, a very, very insightful lecture, and I couldn't help but think about the role of community colleges and why they were in fact formed many, many years ago. Formed as a community asset, as a community resource, as a community anchor, and certainly as an engine for economic growth and development. And I think we need to hold on to that. I think we need to reflect on the fact that community colleges are intended to be responsive. They are intended to be accessible and affordable and reflective of the communities that they serve. But they also need to be respected. And we need to be respected as institutions of higher learning and education and training and development, as my colleagues have mentioned so eloquently. Because we have seen that others have entered into our field, and in some cases not with good intention. And so as we look at that, economic mobility is critically important. And I believe that community colleges are the best place for many communities, especially those that have been left out, left behind, forgotten, thrown away, for economic mobility. And that economic change, that disruption that you so eloquently pointed out, could and should lead us to fundamental shifts. And we are, I believe, in a good position to redesign and create new economic models that will lead to transformation. And we see that happening in the economy. That, you know, when I was in school last century, the biggest thing really, truly, was the Texas Instrument Calculator. It was such a big thing. Wow, we got a calculator. You know, I was accustomed to a slide rule and a protractor and a compass. And you ask the current student of today, you know, how do you use a slide rule? They're like, is that a new dance? Is that, you know, what is it? So, you know, we have to change. We have to change. We have to look at different bold models, as our colleague Aaron has talked about. And I believe that community colleges do that and do that very well and can do more of that because we are the fulcrum. I believe very strongly that we are the catalyst, that we are the fulcrum that can best facilitate sustaining partnerships with the K through 12s, universities, industry, business associations, policymakers, funders, and the like. And so as we look at learn and earn opportunities, apprenticeships, internships, stackable credentials, modernizing and contextualizing our curriculum, I truly agree with you, Michael, about the importance of global education. We are in a global economy. Let's not fool ourselves. We're competing with foreign industries and foreign countries, and our students can do it, and they can do just as well if we create those opportunities. So embracing new ideas around curriculum, about pedagogy, about training and development, competency-based education, prior learning assessment, experiential learning, guided pathways can go a long way, very, very long way. And so what are the recommendations? Well, there's a long list. But I think we need to hold on to the fact that community colleges, I believe, are in the best position to be the economic driver, the economic engine within local communities that can drive transformational growth and transform communities in a way that no other institution can do. So we need to embrace innovation. We need to embrace our history. We need to embrace the fact unapologetically that we are the ones that do it best in terms of serving our students, meeting our students' needs, meeting our students where they are. And so, yes, baccalaureate degrees is something that is critically important that community colleges are doing in about 26, 27 states in the United States of America. Why not New Jersey? I'm putting it out there. Why not New Jersey? It works. The model works. We need to look at different consortium models for how we as the 19 community colleges work together and leverage our expertise and leverage our resources so that we can better serve the 300, 350, 400 and growing thousand students that come to us looking for an opportunity to get a quality education that's accessible and affordable. We need to invest. We need to align our non-credit and our credit courses. We need, quite honestly, we need to just really rethink that, that approach, because time is important and time costs. And we want to have not just the fastest way to degree completion, but the most efficient and impactful way for individuals to get a credential of economic value. And I think that's critically important. Not just get a degree, but get a credential of economic value that is recognized by the industry that they are going into. And you know, the whole notion around developmental education, remediation, what is college ready or college readiness, the role of K through 12 in helping students become college ready. What do we mean by college ready? I think is something that we need to grapple with. And so I'll end there, but with the challenge that we do not forget those who are missing, those who are left behind. Your data clearly spoke volumes, that there are populations of folks, even with our best efforts, that are left behind. And we cannot forget them, and they are the ones that I believe we should be putting greater effort in helping.
Thank you, President Monroe. So now I want to turn for final thoughts to Tamar Jacoby. Tamar has done a lot of work thinking about these issues on the national level and has studied New Jersey. So you bring an outside perspective, but some inside knowledge. So looking forward to your thoughts.
Thanks, Aaron. Well, it's the worst words in the English language. I'm from Washington. I am from Washington, but I do come to New Jersey a lot. Far be it from me to even put asterisks on Professor Rogers' really powerful talk, but I thought he was going to talk more about the future of work. And so just to put a few asterisks, doesn't undo anything he said, but you know, I thought he was going to, the challenge that we were going to be responding to was going to be more about, you know, technology taking over, you know, put in X%, the predictions are wild, you know, from half to more of routine jobs in coming years. People changing jobs much more frequently than even those millennials do now through their career. And people, frankly, large numbers of people in America are probably thrown out of work and having to come back to someplace and retool. And to me, where all of that drives me to think is to think more about, you know, for want of a better word, and my colleague here touched on it, sort of the other mission of community college on the other side of the house, meaning the career education and the non-credit side. And I think that's where I feel that community colleges are and have an underused asset. I want to put in, yeah, we have some numbers up there. The other thing that points to me as community colleges, for me, as community colleges being the institution that's best positioned to respond to the future of work are these numbers. You know, you ask most people, where are people learning new skills now? And people talk about boot camps. Well, boot camps, you can't even see the bar on the chart. It's so small. 18,000. Even the public workforce system, the government workforce training, you know, you can hardly see the bar. We've got under 200,000 people a year in 2016. Apprenticeship, again, everybody's hope. President Obama's hope, President Trump's hope. We're still talking about 500,000 people. Well, look where the students are. They're here. You're the place that students come. You're the place that students turn to. I dare say you're going to be the place that people thrown out of work are going to turn to. And so I think I'm not saying throw out the baccalaureate or throw out the transfer or throw out the gen ed or throw out all those things. Those are important too. But I think if anything, that other mission, which I know is very important to many of you, needs to be even more important and needs to be rethought. It needs to have a different kind of innovation. You know, just more welding and nursing is not going to be enough. We're going to have to rethink that side of the house in some pretty radical ways too. And you know, some of the most interesting research that I know about community college students in recent years is done by somebody named Peter Riley Barr, B-A-R-H-R, who used to be at the University of California, now he's in Michigan, and he discovered something called what he calls skills builders. Now, all your students are skills builders, right? So what does that mean? But what he meant, he found people who were established in careers, middle skill careers, wastewater techs, law enforcement, certain kind of middle skill career. Large numbers of them in California coming back to community college, taking 1 or 2 courses, not matriculating, not getting any kind of credential, but knowing exactly what they needed to advance in their career, acing those courses, and then going back to the workforce, and his study showed earning 15% more or getting promoted. And, you know, I see the same kind of thing on the credit side. You know, I don't have the numbers. I'm not I haven't seen the studies. But, you know, you hear all the time about people who come back to the non-credit side and, you know, take the course they need and then have a different kind of future. So, you know, for me, when I think about the change, it is about how do we, you know, I'll throw out well, one idea is not so radical. My colleague mentioned it. You know, I do think the relationship between the credit side and the non-credit side really needs to be rethought. And the non-credit side needs to be kind of rescued from the red-headed stepsister category and, you know, given much more prominent, important role in the institutions. But then, of course, the bridges between the two also need to be strengthened a lot, and it needs to get a lot easier. You know, because some people will go to the non-credit side and then go to work, but some people will, you know, suddenly discover they like learning and they'll want to go to the credit side, or they'll come back later in life and want to go to the credit side. So, you know, it's about a stronger credit side, it's about better bridges, and it's about a better balance. But the other kind of radical idea that I do see happening now in a number of campuses in a number of states is the idea of what I call kind of unbundled or decoupled community college. And that is just more options and more kind of intentional thought around these options for people who are just going to come back, do one thing they need, and then go back to the workforce. And of course, you know, that would require the state to change how it judges you. Like graduation rates wouldn't be the be-all and end-all anymore. But, you know, people who, you know, a young man I met recently in North Carolina who'd had 2 associate's degrees and still couldn't make a living in the place he lived in North Carolina. And he came back and he took a 13-week course in advanced manufacturing and went out and got a great job. So, you know, I think you all need to think about how to develop those unbundled, decoupled options, not at the expense of other things necessarily, but also not the poor stepchild anymore. So try to be provocative. Come from Washington, be provocative. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Tamara. I think you did that. I think it's safe to say that we could have this conversation for a couple more hours, but we have a lot to do today. So I just want to ask Bill, if, you know, hearing these thoughts, if you had any final moment of reflection and advice for us as we go forth today.
Reflection, okay. So, at the risk of oversimplifying things, or the idea here, and this will partly give you sort of the rationale for the approach I took. Our goal is we want to educate, train the next set of leaders, and we want to provide them, whether it be Alice level or above Alice level wages, or living wages, or, you know, beyond that, right? And there's 2 ways to do that. Okay? There's 2 ways to do that. This is the potential oversimplification. Approach number 1 is the investing in education training. It's helping people understand that they need to be culturally competent. It's making sure that they understand, right, and learn the soft skills, right, that you spoke of, Mr. President, right? It's also making sure that we're developing, we're providing opportunity for career technical, right? So I served on a career technical board when I was in Virginia, and we did amazing work. But the other part, the reason why I spend a lot of time talking about the economy, about the scaffolding, about this issue that, you know, we're in the best economy since World War II, and our economy is not generating Alice level or wages that sustain families, is that yes, we need to do everything that you're doing. You have to do that. But I also urge you to get involved more with that aspect of how we improve work, how we improve the wages that are getting paid. Right? Unions on one level are not as strong as they were in the past in terms of being able to provide that union wage premium, right? Benefits, right? So we can train, we can be responsive to how the economy is shifting, but if we don't make sure our institutions are reinvigorated, okay, right? We're still going to see those forecasts of, right, the fastest growing jobs are going to be, right, paying below $20 an hour, right? The fastest growing, and so what I was trying to urge you to also play in that field even more of, right, about using the leverage that you're going to have in the next coming years. Whole host of retirements. There's going to be lots of labor shortages. Right? Use your leverage of that. You all have the students. You have tomorrow's human capital sitting in your chairs, right? In your classrooms. Use that as leverage along with the economic impact stories that you're telling, right? To be able to say, hey, we want to partner with you, private sector, but you need to pay Alice wages. Right? Or that we're going to commit to providing opportunity, but we want to make sure that if you come and do an internship with your organization, that you're getting a stipend. Right? So we can do both. We can educate and train, but we can also make sure that the nature of work, the quality of work, right, is above some standard that we all agree upon. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And please join me in thanking our panel for an inspiring conversation. So thank you. Thank you all. I think the conversation has begun. I want to encourage all of you to continue the conversation. If you go to menti.com, you'll see in the bottom of your program and enter the code 116008. I'm sorry, we have a changed code. Apologize, an announcement. We have a changed code on menti.com. It's 853986. So if you enter that code, you can continue to provide input and feedback. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce our Secretary of Higher Education, Zakiya Smith-Ellis. As many of you know, Governor Murphy has put community colleges at the forefront of his strategy for making New Jersey a fairer and stronger economy and a stronger place to live. Dr. Smith-Ellis has made her mark in the last 8 months on the job and is an incredible partner for us here in the world of community colleges. So without further ado, Dr. Smith-Ellis.
So thank you, Aaron, and thank you to the entire council and all of you for having me here today. I am really thrilled that you all are having this conversation, not just because it's an important endeavor, but also because we're at the same time developing a state plan, as many of you know, for higher education. One of the first tasks that I had when I got here in March, the governor said, okay, we need to do free community college, so help me figure that out. And the second thing is we need to have a state plan for higher education, a new plan to think about what the future is. And that directive to him, no doubt, came from the number of people that he talked to and the priorities that he had, but also because I think there was some sense within the community in New Jersey that we needed to be thinking about a better way forward, a proactive vision. So when Aaron called and said you all were taking this on, I thought, this is fantastic, because that means I don't have to do as much, because I can just piggyback off what you all are doing. So in seriousness, though, this couldn't have come at a better time. I want to share briefly, because I know the snow and things we're running a little behind. So I'll just briefly share, I think, some of the initial thoughts about where we're going, and also share some very key opportunities for people to provide input. As we kind of develop our plan, I've been going around talking to people. We've been having conversations. We visited many campuses, trying to also talk to students. And I hear a couple of things all the time. And then we also look at the data. So my office collects a ton of data, but we haven't done the best job of sharing that out, which hopefully we'll do more of in the future for a variety of reasons. But we want to do a better job of sharing out what we're seeing. So both kind of hearing from people, looking at the data, and then thinking about, once we have all of this information, what's the best step forward. So a couple of what I would call, I was going to try to title this something, but I don't think there's a need to title this anything, just kind of the facts of the case, like where are we, what do we see, and what does that mean for us moving forward. So one thing I hear from everybody is, so many of our students leave. They leave the state, they go to other places. And I hear this, far and wide, I hear it from students, not really students, I hear it from parents more often. And I hear it from a lot of colleges that I think are worried about enrollments at the 2- and 4-year level. So that's one, probably the out-migration, and what does that mean from the economic picture of the state. The other thing I hear is about affordability, and my background, as some of you know, is in college affordability. My reason for entering higher education was because I was in K-12, and then many of the students that I worked with doing college access were simply denied the opportunity to go on because they couldn't afford it. They didn't understand the process, and our solution for a number of years has been to just help them better understand the process. Like if we could just simplify the process, or if we could just give them all a mentor. But what I can tell you from talking to other people in other industries and people from other countries and just thinking about anything, if I told you the best way for you to save for retirement was to give everybody in this nation a personal retirement advisor and to walk them through the complicated nature of retirement, that's one way to do it. The other way is to create a Social Security system so that people have some kind of safety net, and to just create an automatic withdrawal system from their pension. And every expert will tell you the automatic thing where people don't have to think as much about these complex financial decisions is the way to go. So on affordability, it's about really setting up systems so that it's not up to the individual to figure out. The job of a college student isn't to figure out how to make college more affordable. That's the job of us as adults, to figure out how to make the systems in place. Their job is to learn. Their job is to do the hard work of learning in the classroom. So that was a bit of a tangent on affordability, but I echo many of the thoughts that Dr. Keating just mentioned and the work of the Affordability Task Force. We have to set in place systems that make a clear pathway for students so that they're not trying to figure it out and navigate it so much on their own. So that's another thing I hear is about college affordability. And the last thing that I would, it's actually not the last thing, but another thing that I would mention is just the gaps that we have in who ends up going to college and how well they complete. So this is very clear when you look at the data on college outcomes. And we can quibble about the graduation rates, and it's not just a quibble, they're very serious concerns with how the federal IPEDS graduation rate works. But at the end of the day, there are far too many people who started at one point with the idea that they were going to better their lives through higher education, and because we weren't able to support them the way they needed to, they now have a lot of times debt and no degree. And they become soured on the process, they become discouraged, but more importantly, they're out there in the workforce with the desire and the kind of personal will to do something, but we weren't able to help them figure it out. And this is not just within community colleges, but across the board. We need to do a better job helping people finish what they wanted to start. And so that piece about completion is very key. And when we look at the completion rates by income and race and geography, we've got some places in the state that are knocking it out of the park, and a lot of places that sometimes get pushed under the radar because they don't show up in that overall number that are struggling. New Jersey has one of the most highly educated workforces in the nation. There are only a few states that have more people with post-secondary credentials than New Jersey. It's why we're competitive for when businesses want to locate here. But then when you peel back that onion a little bit and you look at, well, what is the rate of post-secondary attainment in Newark? What is it in Camden? What is it in Cape May? What is it in Salem County? There are some real challenges there. And as we think about the economic future, so I'm so glad that this conversation started with the economic future of our state, we've got to do our part to contribute to that. Higher education was a key part of the governor's economic agenda. Maybe a month or so ago, came out with a big economic plan with the Economic Development Agency and others. And a critical part of the governor's economic plan wasn't tax credits, it wasn't incentives for businesses, it was we have to make sure that people know that New Jersey is a place where they can get highly educated workers, and the talent pipeline is central to our economic development plan for the future. And so as we think about our role within higher ed, I think it's incumbent upon us to meet that challenge. So a lot of good work is happening. You all are thinking about what the place of community colleges is. As we look at the future, I do want to bring up one tough truth that I don't know if it was brought earlier because I was a little bit late, but that is the demographic changes that are happening. And the fact is that there are fewer and fewer high school graduates because people 18 years ago didn't have babies at the same rate. And so what we're going to have over the next several years is the classes of high school graduates are going to get smaller and smaller. Something else I've noticed is that everybody wants to serve the well-prepared high school student who has got great grades and great test scores, and not as many people are interested in that adult who may need to go back, or that person who knows that they are underpaid and knows that they need to up their skill game. And so I want us to have as much vigor and energy in talking about adult learners, because if we want to have this, yes, adult learners, please. I didn't have a pause in my pause for applause after adult learners. I'll add that to the next time we do the remarks. But that, if we're thinking about just having enrollments, we don't need to be as, I get sad, frankly, when we look at the demographic changes and say, oh, woe is me, all is lost. Looking at the data, there are almost 1 million people in the state of New Jersey who have some college and no credential. That means at some point in their life, they thought that post-secondary education was something that they could achieve and did not finish. And so they already have some credits, they've already got some experience, and frankly, with the exception of probably Thomas Edison, many of our state's four-year colleges are not really set up to serve them. So the place where they're going to go, they're not going to leave their stuff, leave their families, leave their kids, go off to college, they're looking to places within their communities that they can drive to every day, and that is the bread and butter of community colleges. Okay, that's another place I didn't have in mind. So if in this visioning process, I want to, again, this is not my vision, this is your vision. I'm just looking at what are the needs of the state. I am so excited about this. I'm just looking forward to picking up the notes after this and figuring out how do we copy and paste into our plan. But this is just, yes, Aaron is yeah, just copy and paste what we send you into the plan. So this is really just an opportunity, though. We know what the challenges are. We know what the needs of the state are. We know that there are many students who could benefit from post-secondary education. We have some challenges as a state that we don't need to get into because this is a day about looking forward and visioning. But if we can think about how do we put those systems in place, how do we change what we're doing to better align with the needs of the state, the needs of the students, we will strengthen this economy. We will grow the talent pool of our population. And we will see success because of higher education within the state of New Jersey, and I think community colleges are right at the center of that. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to what comes.
Thank you, Secretary Smith-Ellis, and thank you for bringing your vision and passion to New Jersey and to this conversation. Thank you. So the snow and weather kind of set us back, so I'm going to keep the ball moving and ask our next speaker and our panel to join us on stage. Our next speaker is Dr. Moshe Kam, who's the Dean of the Newark College of Engineering, and we're having a panel with Dr. Steve Rose from Passaic County Community College, Dr. Margaret McMenamin, President of Union County College, and Jim Baroud. So if I could ask all four of them to join me on stage. Dean Kam is, as I said, the Dean of the Newark College of Engineering. Until August of 2014, he served as the head of electrical and computer engineering at Drexel, and he is the past president of the IEEE. He thinks a lot about the issues of the changing world, changing technology, and we are delighted to have him here to share his thoughts with us and then to have a panel discussion. So, Dr. Kam.
Very good. Appreciate the opportunity to talk to you this morning. As indicated, I am the Dean of the Newark College of Engineering at NJIT and wanted to talk to you a little bit about trends and transformation in the engineering profession, which affects many of the students who study towards STEM disciplines in community colleges, and wanted to discuss what these trends mean to engineering education. Let me say a word or two of where I'm coming from. NJIT was created in 1885. It was at the time that a large number of schools in the East Coast decided that engineering needs to be tested. And we became the Newark College of Engineering about 100 years ago. It is important, however, that when NJIT and many other schools, such as RPI and Drexel, were created in this string of creativity in this area, they were all thinking about manufacturing, about products, and about production plans. And this is kind of in our DNA, which requires that we now rethink the way that we organize ourselves and teach our students. NJIT today is a public research university. It has approximately 12,000 students. NCE, the Newark College of Engineering, is the largest college of engineering in New Jersey with approximately 6,000 students. I brag here about some of our more successful graduates, but I'll skip that for now. And I'll also indicate that we are offering almost all major engineering programs in almost all major engineering areas. Perhaps the only one that's really missing here is petroleum engineering, but biomedical, civil, chemical, computer, electrical, environmental, industrial, materials, mechanical, and pharmaceutical, which is a bit unusual and has to do with the fact that the pharmaceutical industry is very strong in the state. We are also starting now a School of Applied Engineering and Technology, which will be our liaison with community colleges. We put there all our engineering technology programs in two divisions. One is the built environment, and the other one is electrical and mechanical. We also started an engineering education division to perform research specifically about engineering education, and we are working towards a chemical and biological engineering technology. The last thing that I'll say about NJIT before I move to trends is that if you did not visit us recently, I suggest that you do that, because we opened a large makerspace, about 10,000 square feet, and we are about to double it in the next 2 years. And this is a collaborative area where students can get together and use state-of-the-art machinery. And the state-of-the-art machinery that we put there is industrial grade. We have machines of the kind that industry uses. We have 3D printers that can do metals and titanium. We have a water jet. We have CNC machines. You can have a lot of fun there. We believe that this is the natural environment of the engineer, a lab of this nature. And we are looking for the opportunity to work with community colleges and on your using that. So coming and visiting us at the present time is perhaps a good idea. So back to the main topic. I would like to speak a little bit about geography, how changes in the geography of engineering is affecting the way that we teach and educate our students, about the rise of the service economy, about the boundaries between engineering disciplines and the way that they are blurring. I'd like to speak about the rise of computing, networking, mobile communication, and social networks, about cybersecurity, about new subdisciplines, was mentioned earlier, AI, robotics, big data, and nanotechnology, and about the workplace, and we'll do all that in about like 15 minutes. So let's speak about geography first. We have had a rather major shock of the engineering profession in the United States starting about 15 years ago, when significant and large volume of work, of engineering work that we were supposed to be doing, that was supposed that our inheritance meant that we in Western Europe, and to some extent Eastern Europe and the USSR, but that they had their own insularity to protect us from that. That we are doing this kind of engineering and everybody else is buying our products, and then they started, they have the temerity to start manufacturing, design, and research and development, including high-tech, in the kind of industries that were not that popular outside of the United States and Western Europe, say 25 years ago. And these trends, on one hand, create great alarm, but they're also making life much more interesting because of the fact that there is now competition and different kind of compartmentalization. And there's like no sign that this will abate. If you just look at the number of engineers that are created in other countries, and I put here just the largest countries that create engineers, you can see what's happening. And these engineers are not inferior to our engineers because the quality of the top schools in China and India have risen. And as you know very well, many of the individuals who teach there have been taught here in Europe and other places, but they're also coming into their own. We also look at the quality, and when you look at the quality, you see a picture that if you want to look at it as a little bit depressing, you can, but if you can also look at it as motivating a young person to go into engineering, you can also see it this way. This is the Program for International Students Association, PISA. This is a program that tests the skills and knowledge of 15-year-old students. And you can see what happens here with the top, those who get level 5 or more. And the picture is not particularly flattering, because on the right hand is Shanghai, China, which is a certain definition of parts of China that they have tested. And then comes Singapore, etc. And we are at the end. And however, if you go to the bottom, level 2 or lower, look who's leading. So if you want, you can look at it and say, we have a problem. If you want, you can tell a young person, look, there is an opportunity here. I mean, your competition is not doing particularly well. This is an opportunity to rise and shine. So how do we react to that? The natural reaction was keep the barbarians out. We will fight that. I mean, you'll have access to these slides. IEEE is very close to my heart. I'm a member of IEEE, the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers. This is a branch of it, IEEE USA. Here is a letter to Congressman Dan Aurorabacher, which I understand just lost his seat in Orange County, and basically tell him, thank you very much for keeping those terrible foreigners out. This is like one way of dealing with this. I think that this is a very absurd way in the long run. It will fail. A more reasoned approach for us as educators is to understand that we need to educate future engineers to work in a transnational environment. No longer will we sit here and develop it, design it, research it, make it, and everybody will come and buy it. We need to make sure that our students, if we can, and that's a challenge, do a semester abroad. If we can, we should invite students from other countries to do a semester in our school. We need to tell our students that the world exists. We need to teach our students of international trends, and that they should understand industrial and economic trends, which we start doing, but it's not part of the traditional engineering curriculum. Now, at the bottom, I wrote that one should develop a global system of credential and accreditation recognition. And these slides have been evolving because I've been writing them and presenting this over the years, and I'm actually striking it out. And the reason I'm striking it out because of the fact that for all practical purposes, these systems of accreditation and global accreditation, as much as they have, of course, some value, are less and less important to employers. And they less and less rely on these formal credentials and the Washington Accord and all the good things, and more looking at the candidate and finding what the candidate can do, not so much on the credentials. The other issue that we need to reckon with, especially because of the fact that we came, almost all major universities, certainly all those on the East Coast, but also many of the others all over the country, came from an ethos of manufacturing and production. And of course, manufacturing and productions are important, but the service economy has risen. And the service economy has recently been accelerated by the Internet of Things. what we see is that there is an increased importance of the service sector. You can look at the Fortune 500 and try to ask ourselves about each one of these companies, is it service or is it manufacturing and production? And the answer is pretty clear. And also the dichotomy between product and service has really disappeared because of the fact that we see now a continuum of service product. If you look at the numbers of individuals who work in the service industry, the green there, as opposed to the ones who we can call manufacturing, which is the red there, you can see what is happening. And if you just look at, this is a picture of the remote in my living room. And look, Netflix is just on there. It's a service. It is a service. And at the bottom, you see a picture of a Rolls-Royce engine. And Rolls-Royce doesn't just sell you an engine. Rolls-Royce is actually looking at this engine remotely all the time and provides a lot of maintenance, and you pay for the maintenance. And now Rolls-Royce also will do it to ships. This ship comes with maintenance which is done with the Internet of Things from afar. This is different kind of engineering. And look at this smart refrigerator, which tells you what kind of meat you have in the refrigerator and tells you how to create the shopping list based on what you have consumed. This is different than the kind of refrigerator that we taught a mechanical engineer to design, which was based primarily on the classes in thermodynamics. So the Internet of Things has become an integral part of contemporary manufacturing, which means that a mechanical engineer needs to know these things, and that the mechanical engineers need to know cybersecurity. Because if you devise Internet of Things without understanding cybersecurity, it's a useless design. It will fail. The initial reaction was, this is beneath our dignity. And it took a couple of years. It took a couple of years to convince our faculty, and look, we are all old men and women usually, you know, people who came from a previous era, especially the ones who are senior, that we need to do this. We wanted to leave that to the servants, the computer scientists, you know, the marketers, you know, people who are inferior. And of course, this wouldn't work. And the service economy is here to stay. And we need to integrate it in the curriculum. And it means, and this ties to what I'll say in a minute about computing, that computing and networking and cybersecurity are actually topics that a civil engineer or a chemical engineer or a mechanical engineer needs to understand and master. And that means a totally different view of what our curriculum will look like or should look like in a couple of years. So it's not anymore about manufacturing products and production. These are very important. It is a sector. We are working on this. We are opening maker spaces for this. But that's not the only thing that we are doing. So now let's say a word about computing, about networking, about mobile communication, social networks. I don't need to convince you that computing is now an integral part of everything that we build as engineers. I mean, I used to go and destroy our family's car every weekend, kind of by tweaking it a little bit and looking under the hood, and my father would come and fix what I've done. I cannot do it anymore, and he cannot fix it anymore because of the fact that it is now a computerized system, which means that in order to understand it, in order to build it, in order to design it, in order to maintain it, a completely different set of skills is needed. And we need to provide students with the ability to select and adapt and assess computing tools and computing libraries. I still see classes that say computer-aided design. Well, there is no design which is not computer-aided. You can actually drop the computer-aided. They're all like that. And integrating the software and understanding algorithms and complexity and verification and testing and computer applications and programming, again, are becoming something which is fundamental. We are still educating many engineers who are illiterate about computing and networking, don't understand how social networks work, and believe that cybersecurity is something that comes at the end after the real design was finished. And of course, it is now at the beginning of the design. If we continue like that, and I'm sure we will not continue like that, but right now many programs in engineering still march like that, it's a march towards obsolescence because these engineers will not be particularly useful. And the initial reaction was, keep it to the computer scientists. And what is happening really is that we are all becoming, all engineers, we are becoming computer scientists with an application. A person who design a bridge which is embedded with sensors and where the infrastructure is monitored and where traffic is continually monitored and guided by control algorithms by a computer is becoming essentially a computer scientist with an application in transportation. I believe that computing, excuse the heresy, may replace calculus as the fundamental analytical skill that is needed by engineers. It may be, at the very least, at the same level. Not to say anything against physics-based calculus, but when you think about the skills that engineers do, computing becomes a skill and we'll adapt or we will die. I want to make a comment about AI technology and big data and say this. These are, of course, very important. These are, of course, topics that enter the engineering curriculum, especially through machine learning when we speak about AI. I suggest, however, that we do all this in good taste because of the fact that there is a tendency when these new technologies come and show their strength to believe that they have solved all problems of humanity. And those of you who have been around when fuzzy logic was supposed to solve all problems of humanity and when neural network was supposed to solve all problems of humanity will get the same flavor of religious fervor that you hear from individuals who advocate the new technologies. Yes, they need to enter the curriculum. No, it's not the end of history. The work of engineers is done increasingly by others, and the boundaries between disciplines are blurring. I don't have time to go over all this, but I took this from a page of mechanical engineering in Lehigh. And if I didn't tell you that this is mechanical engineering at Lehigh, you may think that this may be electrical engineering by the topics. And the same thing would happen to you if you look at this, which is a page from biomedical engineering at Georgia Tech. And once again, if I didn't tell you, and if they didn't put biomedical before some of the subjects, you would again think that this is electrical engineering curriculum. So it's no longer that you can make these clear distinction between the boundaries, and the initial reaction and the reaction of some of our faculty is still like that. Fight these invaders. This course belongs to us. Okay? And consequently, by the way, and this I don't want to pretend that I solved this problem in my own institution, we are still teaching optimal control to electrical engineers, optimal control to mechanical engineers, optimal control to chemical engineers, as if the Jacobi-Bellman equations are different when you're a chemical engineer than when you're an electrical engineer, and they are not. And what we ought to do, and what increasingly good schools are doing, is they are developing bridge between disciplines, minors, joint degrees, educating young engineers to work together in teams, putting them in design projects every semester, every term, every year, every term, every year, every semester, and make them cross-disciplinary teams and work at the intersection, because the work is at the intersection of different disciplines, and increasingly life sciences is also becoming a part of this intersection, not just engineering and mathematics. This is an example of a degree from Strathclyde in Glasgow. There is no such degree in the United States yet, but maybe we will have one, which is a degree in electrical and mechanical engineering. The workplace that we are preparing our students for is also changing. The long-term tenure of engineers in a single company is becoming less common. Less common. If you look at the turnover in different sectors of the economy, technology has the highest turnover among the professions. And the arsenals of skills that is required of engineers continue to change. Many engineers work in disciplines that did not even exist at the time that they graduated, let alone companies that did not exist when they graduated. These are the 10 largest companies in the United States by market value. Started with Apple, Alphabet, which is the mother of Google, Microsoft, and so on. I went to look and see how many of them did not exist when I graduated, and you could see, and it's pretty interesting that there are like 4 of them that did not even exist at the time, and the technologies that they are espousing did not exist. And there was a strong desire to have better protection, but of course better protection does not work. And what we need to do is to change the way that we train engineers. Engineers will have to understand that getting a job and holding it for 30 years is not going to be the norm, but the exception. And we need to have them grow to become themselves as the business. You are the business. There is also this whole issue of continuing education that right now is divorced from your undergraduate education. And my feeling is that we as institutions will need to tie it together and to tell a student that your tuition dollars have bought you continuing education for the next 10 years also in our institution, maybe using remote techniques in order to make sure that your knowledge continues to be renewed and does not become obsolete. So to summarize, we have a few small challenges. Geographical challenge, the challenge to move institutions that were built on a production ethos into the service economy. We need to make sure that the boundaries between engineering disciplines that are blurring are actually blurring also at the school level, not just in real life, because we need to not just follow, we need to lead, but in this case we need to correct. We need to understand that all engineers need to understand, and this should be part of the curriculum, which right now it is not. Computing, networking, mobile communication. I didn't say much about social networks, but this, of course, is increasingly an important and interesting challenge. That cybersecurity is now an obligation of every engineer. You cannot leave it to someone else or hope that the expert will come and fix it. That there are new subdisciplines that need to be integrated, but cautiously, and that we need to prepare engineers to a workplace that has changed significantly. We are living in exciting times. Thank you.
Dr. Cam, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your perspective that I think is provoking a lot of interesting thinking in our audience. So now I want to turn to our panel and ask for their reactions and thoughts. As we live in this rapidly changing, technologically based world, what does that mean for our community colleges? So we're joined today by President Margaret McMenamin of Union County College, Jim Baroud of the New Jersey Tech Council, and Steve Rose, President of Passaic County Community College. So who would like to go first? All right.
Well, this is an exciting time, certainly. And some of you know I had a 100-year-old mother, and she talked to me about what it was like in the 1920s, when the 19 teens and 20s, when the horseless carriage came around, and people always wondered if we'd continue if we would use that. You know, it stunk and it was noisy and all that, and it makes me think about what we're going through now with this technological revolution. We still have faculty who are yelling at students for having a cell phone in the classroom, and what the professor here talked about was a total transformation of higher education and the preparation of our students. So somehow in community colleges, we have to get past the things that we're talking about, complaining about students using cell phones and technology, and start embracing what's happening. We have to do it for two reasons: our environment. Our students expect it, and if we don't do this, if we don't launch ourselves rapidly into this future, this exciting future, our competitors and I'm not talking about the Passaics and the Salems and the Cumberlands, I'm talking about the Googles and the Amazons and the Facebooks, are going to come into our sector and start providing the educational experiences that our students are expecting of them. So that is our challenge. We've got to shed our fears of the future, just as they did when they had to give up old Bessie the mule or the horse and embrace that little Model T. And we've got to launch ourselves, holding hands if we're frightened by this change, into a future that is going to be all about technology, gamification, artificial intelligence, the tremendous use of data that we are not doing right now. And frankly, I had a new board member come onto campus about 2 months ago, and all he would talk about was blockchain and the potential for blockchain in higher education with decentralized data records and things like that. So if we have any registrars in the audience, you got to start thinking about that as well.
How much time do I have? How much? All right, so this is going to be real. I'm going to try to be as quick as possible, and then we could do Q&A. So first of all, Moshe, thank you for that great presentation. So much technology is coming, and NJIT is just a great university with a new makerspace, which we are having an event at on December 5th, which students are invited for free, including NJIT students. So we are like a chamber of commerce focused on technology and innovation. We do 100 events a year throughout the state. We have 1,000 corporate members. We have a great board. Jean Ping is on our board. She represents the community colleges. We need to work more and collaborate more with the community colleges because as the supporter and nurturer of this innovation ecosystem across the state, an educated pipeline of talent is critical. This industry, our economy cannot grow with more good employees that can work for these small and large companies that need talent, and talent that is always being upgraded. Everything is changing so quickly. So I had three topics I wanted to talk about. Disruption, entrepreneurship, motivation, is this working? And love. So is this working? Okay. So disruption, we all know about all the technological disruptions. Everything is changing so quickly. We are moving toward a gig economy. You know this, right? So most people are not going to have 12 to 20 jobs throughout their career, right? 12 to 20 jobs. That's crazy, right? So the reality, and Moshe pointed this out in one of his slides, that even engineers will have to be their own entrepreneurs, right? Even engineers will have to be entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurship is a critical skill. So I can't overstate that enough. Whether they're going to work for themselves, work for a small business or a growth business or a large business, understanding innovation, they need to have these skills. So whatever you can do, I know you guys are doing more and more, and the universities are doing more and more. Whatever you can do to teach these skills is going to be much appreciated and useful for them in the short and long term. And I know the curriculum is packed. One of the easiest ways, most elegant ways to do this is to simply give them a taste of it during a startup weekend, or it's called Startup Weekend. It gives them, it's two and a half days. I happily work with you to pilot this, but I think every student should be mandated to go through a startup weekend. I know you can't push anything else into your curriculums, but maybe once throughout their tenure, not only at 2-year schools, but 4-year schools, they should go through a startup weekend. It's the most efficient and elegant way to introduce them to the world of entrepreneurship so that they can learn these skills and use them in the future, and then get further education, either from your schools or online. So that's number one. Now again, the soft skills were mentioned earlier. We all know that. They need those. They're not getting enough of them. They're in their own digital cocoons, which is a problem. So soft skills, can't overstate that enough. Coding skills, that was mentioned earlier, right? Coding skills are changing. They might not need coding skills. The machines are going to start doing that for them. But they need to know how to keep learning about how to control the machines and how to understand the interfaces between telling machines what to do and AI what to do so that their business or their department or they can thrive in their business. Okay, so that's just a reminder. I know you know that. So entrepreneurship, again, this is critical. Motivation, everything's online, right? This is a big problem with all people, but especially young people. If they're in their own digital cocoon and they can do everything by pushing a button, that's a problem. We need to get them out of that comfort zone. And you guys are in a perfect position about all the people that you educate throughout the year, the bricks and mortar. So getting them in real life is really, really special and really important to engage them. And you have to mandate this. And I know you mentioned get your cell phone, but I believe that there should be some no phone zones or no computer zones in the classroom or on parts of campuses, because you have to force them to come into contact and to talk to each other and to learn how to resolve conflicts and to not get into their own bubbles, which, as we all know, social media has its own negative effects. But if we can force them out of this bubble, we can engage them, and they will appreciate it in the months and years to come. It's so important. I can't emphasize that enough. And the following point is just, obviously, lifelong learning. As Moshe mentioned, everything is becoming a service business. So community colleges are the ultimate service businesses. Lifelong learning, giving education, and community. And community is even more important now because, again, when retail goes away, which it's going away, there are less centers of community. There are less centers of people coming together. So you're in a perfect sweet spot here where you have the connections, you need to lure them in and keep them forever. And it's just a beautiful opportunity. It obviously has to be thought through. And that brings me to my last point, is love. So when you get them out of their bubble, when you get people onto your campus, into your classroom, the engagement is critical. I tell my staff, we need to love and shepherd everyone who comes through the doors. They do not have to be at our 100+ events a year. They don't. No one has to be anywhere. Everything can be done by their cell phone, or their iPad, or their desktop, or their laptop. And it is incumbent on us to delight the customer, to love the customer. And they will be better off, the schools will be better off, our society will be better off if we engage our customers, our students, our lifelong learners, our community.
President Rose.
All right. So a couple of quick points. First, NJIT is the perfect partner for community colleges. And we have very few that I would say are perfect partners. Your faculty work with our faculty to ensure that when students transfer from our institution, it is seamless. And we hear it all the time. When students transfer from us to you, it works. So NJIT, that's a model. But I'm going to bring it back to something that's real important for us. You know, we're one of the roles of community colleges. We're an anchor in a locality. We try to be in our community something which helps bring this community along. Now we're talking about technology, and we're talking about what we talk about all the time: our students. In my place, most high school students who enter our college can't get into these programs. They are already at such a low level in some cases that it's so tough to bring them up. So one of the roles that we have to play is we've got to work with K through 12 to ensure that these students have every chance that every student has. So my place was very fortunate recently. We got a federal grant, a 7-year federal grant, rare things to get. We are taking 200 students in 7th grade in Patterson, and we are going to be working with these students. Every summer they're going to come to us, after school programs, Saturday programs, and these are STEM-based programs, and we're going to be working with these 200 7th graders who, if you go back historically, would get to the community college, and their math level would be pretty low, their science level would be pretty low, and we get some that can transfer to NJIT, but unfortunately not enough. We take these 200 students from 7th grade and we follow them all the way through. We're going to have a lot more students for you 7 years from now. These are the kind of things that we have to worry about, you know, at community colleges, because equity, access, you know, that's what we're about, and that's still an issue today. As our secretary said before, this state has some of the most wonderful schools in the country. We have the best educated population, but boy, do we have gaps. And it's something that we really do have to work on. One last point. You know, we also talk about all this technology and everything else. But on our campuses, and we actually had a meeting about this week at my place, we still have students who the only way they get a paper done is to write it on their cell phone. Right, Maggie's going the same thing. They don't have a laptop, they don't have a tablet, they don't have broadband at home. You know, they use our colleges. You see them sitting around, and the only thing that they can do is try and write that paper on that cell phone. And we're dealing with the basics. And, you know, to ensure that these students are able to take advantage of everything and be ready for this world, we've got to make sure that they're prepared. And, you know, we've got to worry about stuff like that, of how do we get them something decent to write a paper on and do those kind of things. So a lot of work to do.
Great, thank you. So thank you to our panelists. So Dr. Kam will give you the final thought, and on behalf of all of us, thank you for NJIT being a tremendous partner, and we're all very excited about your new School of Applied Technology and the partnerships. But as you hear the panelists and you reflect on the future of community colleges, what are some parting thoughts you can leave with us?
Thank you. So I appreciate all these nice words, but as I said, I sincerely invite you to visit us, especially now if you have not been there recently. We'll be very glad to show you our facilities, especially the makerspace, and see how we can work with you together. So I wrote down what I think are the top 3 challenges, and interestingly enough, they are all curriculum challenges. And the reason that this is meaningful is the following. I ask myself at the end of every week, which is, as you can imagine, full of combat and battle, what are we fighting over? What are the most contentious issues? So when you ask yourself what's most important to, say, our faculty, some people would look at it and say probably money, right? But money actually is not on the top of the list. Money is like 3rd. The 2nd is space, and the most fierce and difficult wars are on curriculum. That's the most important thing to our faculty. And so I think that the 3 challenges are in this area, and I'm talking about from a STEM viewpoint, of course. And one of them is flexibility. Our curricula, it was mentioned that they are packed. They're artificially packed. They are packed because we pack them and because we believe that they are sacred, but they are not. And we need to make sure that they are flexible, because right now most of the curricula are very, very prescribed. And we tell you that you can choose, but you can only choose the following. So that's the first thing. The second thing is also discussed is computing. I'm absolutely sure that we need to infuse all our curricula with computing. And the last thing is design experience. Individuals who are in STEM really need design experience all the time. These 3 things we can do, and I hope we can do them together. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I want to thank this panel, Dr. Kam again, and to thank our earlier panel, Dr. Rogers and Secretary Smith-Ellis. So we are running a little bit behind because of the weather, so I'd invite all of you to join us in the cafeteria. We are going to be celebrating the contributions and accomplishments of 10 amazing people in the world of community colleges and having a very nice lunch at the same time. So look forward to seeing you in the cafeteria, out the door, and to your left. Thank you very much.
Vision 2028 Leadership Summit, a framework for the future of New Jersey's community colleges. Thank you for watching the live stream of the Vision 2028 Leadership Summit. Community colleges are well positioned to play a significant role in addressing many of the challenges and opportunities facing New Jersey. We need your perspectives, your partnership, and your ideas for innovation, both now and in the years ahead. Please provide your suggestions for the future via our online idea box at www.surveymonkey.com/r/vision2028NJCCC.